Alright, and now we are officially live for the 26th podcast for the Elder Scrolls Online University podcast. Yep. Joining me today is, as usual, my co-host, Alywels. And special guest today is Ce-Nex, who I think some people have heard on stream already. Yep.
Hello.
Hello. How are you doing? How are you guys doing today? How's it going?
Doing good. Today's my daughter's birthday. I have twins. They're now 4 years old.
So they were born on the same day, right?
Yep, they were born on the same
Okay,
day.
just making sure. Maybe one was born at 11:55 p.m. and the other was born at 12:03 a.m. You know what I mean? Something like that.
No, they're born around 6 in the morning.
Okay. Do you think that ever happens?
Yeah, I know twins that's happened to. I know.
So how does that work? Like,
I went to...
if one twin's born like after midnight and one twin's born before midnight, like, is it the same birthday or like different birthday?
So I went to college with twin girls, and one of them was born at 11:57, and the other one was born at 12:11. So they were about 10-15 minutes apart.
Okay.
They both basically took 2 days for their own birthdays.
Oh, okay. Well,
they milked it. They really milked it.
I always feel sorry for people that are born on like Christmas Day. That must kind of suck. Like,
why does it suck?
It's never about you, is it? It's always about the
True.
little baby Jesus.
I had a friend in high school who was born on Valentine's Day.
Oh, my brother's
he never
born
really
on
got
Valentine's
to.
Day.
Yeah, so he never properly got to celebrate it if he had a girlfriend.
Mm-hmm. Or he got to really celebrate it.
Yeah, I guess.
Oh man.
Anyway.
But yeah, so you are, well, I don't even know what to call it, a carry seller?
Yeah, carry organizer, carry seller.
So I guess for the people who've never heard of all this, like the concept of selling skins, achievements, gear, by organizing groups, whether it's 4-man or 12-man groups, to do all this, to sell runs for gold, not for money. What's the process like? First, I guess, like, for the buyer, what's the process like?
So it usually happens 2 ways for the buyer. One, they see an advertisement and they reach out to the person advertising. Those are usually referred to within the business as finders. People who go out and advertise and look for clients. And then we have people who know the Discord or know the guild by reputation, and then they go actively searching out for it themselves. Or they are already a part, or they are returning buyers and stuff like that. So that's the initial process of how a buyer will connect to us. And then, depending on the guild, it really changes the Discord server to Discord server. For us, we have an automated service within Sempiternal, the guild I represent, the guild I've been representing for the last 2 years. A buyer comes in, we have a bot. They click on the bot, and the bot will send them a bunch of information, like what is it you're looking for, what are your available days and times, here are the prices, and then they select that, and that creates a ticket. That ticket then goes to the officers and the carry raid leads. The officers and carry raid leads will, according to availability, will schedule the run. We'll also contact the buyer to make sure all the information they provided is correct. Sometimes there is a bit of hiccup here and there. A client may accidentally give their character name instead of their user ID, which makes it almost impossible to contact them in-game, right? So, and sometimes there's a bit of hiccups when they get confused. They're trying to buy a Vass hard mode skin, but they ended up, from the bot, they ended up purchasing like a Vass +0 instead, right? So it's good not to just 100% rely on the bot. Opening and facilitating dialogue with the client is in itself pretty important. Once all that is done, one of the raid leads one of the officers will then create a separate ticket, which is for the raid leads. The raid leads, they will see we create a small memo It has the buyer's user ID. It has the buyer's Discord ID. The purchase, the value or the price, and then the price is then divided into. We have like, I guess fees. I guess you would call it. We have the guild cut. The guild cut is usually the percentage that goes to the house. And then we have the finder's cut. If there is a finder. If there's not a finder, then the finder's cut does not apply. But if there is a finder, the finder will then get a certain percentage of the total sale. For us in Sempiternal, we charge 15%, which, as far as I know, is the highest of any Discord server on PCNA. We charge 15% of the total cut. So let's say the total sale is a 10 million gold. The finder, the person who found the person and they recommended them to us, or they brought them to us, they get 1.5 million gold from the total ticket, from the total sale. And then after then there's the raid lead fee. That we give our raid leads a small fee for their services, for volunteering and organizing the actual roster. And then once all that is deducted, the payment, whatever is left, is divided amongst the other 11 people. With prices being what they are right now, most trials will easily provide 1 million gold payout per run. After all the math is done, the carry raid lead will then post in a separate part of the server where only certified people who can do carries, they can see the roster, and then they sign up as they will, and then the run happens. After the run happens, if the buyer purchased gear, or if they requested the gear, we line up, we trade them the gear, and at the end, everybody lines up then to the carry raid lead. The raid lead will then distribute payment, and that's it.
So Olivo,
it sounds like a lot.
Yeah. So Olivo hates carries.
I don't hate carries.
Yeah, you do.
No. I know they're not for me, and I don't really understand why people buy them in a game. Like, I feel like the game is to play the game, right? But
okay, I think that's a common question. What do you say about that, Ce-Nex?
So, this is something that's been brought up many times to me, and it's a conversation I've had many times. Why do people buy carries? Like, you're taking away from the value of the game. You're already paying for the game. Why would you pay even more to play something that's, you already bought? To me, the answer to that question is always, fun is a subjective word. People enjoy different things. I've had people from the roleplay community who wanted to buy the Beast Personality skin, which is the Challenger achievement from Veteran March of Sacrifice. It's the werewolf one. And for a role player, like, their entire, how they enjoy the game is through role-playing, obviously. And I've been in a few role-playing communities. I myself don't role-play, but I've been in the communities. I've watched and interacted with them. They have some very intricate storylines. Like, the narratives they paint are phenomenal. In fact, no disrespect to ZeniMax, but some of the narratives that the people of the community, of the role-playing community, come up are significantly better than the stories that we play out in the game. So, yeah. And they spend hours doing these things. They have, like, it is not an exaggeration to say they have a novel's length worth of narratives painted out through their characters, through their interactions. Like, it's really an amazing thing to watch. It's a hallmark of the role-playing community. And there's a reason why this is called an RPG game, a role-playing game. Because it goes back to that old Dungeons and Dragons roots. So these people who spend hours and hours and hours within role-playing, they have no interest in dungeons. They have no interest in trials. These things are subjectively not fun to them. So in order for them to get these achievements, they would have to put in the time and effort away from the things that they enjoy. So it's counterproductive to the concept of having fun in a game. Whereas give a group a lump sum of gold, and you get what you want, and then it only takes like maybe 45 minutes, depending on the group. A challenger achievement only takes like anywhere between half an hour to a full hour. So a lump sum of gold for an hour's worth of time, and then you just go back to what you enjoy. Like, it's a win-win situation for everybody. Another example, I had a couple an elderly couple who were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary inside of ESO. It was really cute. They had built this entire house, like decorated it as like a wedding chapel, and they were inviting guests over and everything. And they told me they wanted the VHOF skin because they wanted the VHOF skin to celebrate them being in their golden years together. And I'm like, oh wow, that's adorable. But they're both 70 plus years old. Doing VHOF for them was, well, quite frankly, it wasn't possible. They were housers. They were very casual players, but like to get into a raiding group and prog VHOF, that would have taken them weeks, if not months. And this was back in 2020, like late 2020. So again, DPS was not what it was today. They came to me and they're like, can we give you gold and you give us our skin so we can properly celebrate our wedding anniversary the way we want? I'm like, yeah, of course. What I did was I took each of them into 2 separate instances and charged them both the full price. Great sale. Everybody walked away happy.
Amazing.
Okay.
I mean, so many questions. Like,
Okay.
the first thing I worry about is where are these people getting this money? Because these carriers are super expensive, and I worry that what could end up happening is like, Nefus has got this really cool skin. I need to have it because then I'll look cool. So I'm going to spend like $80 on crowns so I can sell them for gold. And meanwhile, that $80 should have gone on feeding my kids, but because I'm so obsessed with getting, looking cool, and there's so much pressure on me to look cool that I'm prioritizing video game coolness over, real life things that I should be spending money on.
Wait.
And I worry that there's a bit of pressure.
Wait.
I mean, I know this is like it's a long shot, isn't it? Really?
Wait. Someone has a kid they need to feed?
Yeah.
And they choose to spend $80 on a video game?
It happens.
Bruh.
I refuse to take responsibility for that.
What?
I refuse to take responsibility for that.
I've never heard of this.
The parent.
I know it's not your fault, but like, you're enabling it potentially. I mean, this is like 0.1%.
That's an extreme environment. That's like saying Zoss even having a crown store is enabling people from abusing or neglecting their children. That's going a bit excessive in my opinion, Alywels.
Yeah. I mean, it is, but that's like the worst case scenario, something that could possibly happen. And I worry that is all people that buy crown, buy carries. Of course, it's not. There's always something in the back of my head thinking, this person is like, they're addicted to the game and there's something bad happening there. I don't know, there's something about buying carries that just doesn't, it's not that savory,
To each their own, I respect that. But, we're a service and there's a demand for it. Since there's a demand, we supply it and we profit from it. It's basic capitalism.
Yeah. And I think at heart, I'm not really down with capitalism.
Fair.
See, that's a difference.
Fair.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a weak argument, but it's something that I worry about.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, any sort of peer pressure where you're pressuring people into spending their real life money to look cool. I mean, this happens in all walks of life, like kids wanting to buy like expensive trainers to look cool in front of their friends. I feel like that's a situation where society has like failed them a little bit. That you don't need to look cool. You don't need this skin to be cool and enjoy the game. Just enjoy the game. You don't need to spend your money.
I mean, fair enough. We're not a necessity. What we offer is not 100% not a necessity. It's basically based off of people's wants and desires and whims. But as far as I know, all the finders that I manage, it is basic, just advertising. You post it in zone chat, you don't do anything more. You never pressure, you never peer pressure, you never try to force or coerce a sale. And quite frankly, 9 out of 10 sale or 9 out of 10 communications with buyers end in failure.
What in
Like
what way?
if you go to Zone Chat and you advertise, somebody contacts you, and you go through the dialogue. They'll ask you, "Well, how much is this skin, or how much is a gear on?" 9 out of 10 times, they'll be like, "Yeah, no, that's way too much." Or there have been a few times where they've questioned the number of chromosomes you have, or they'll ask whether or not your mother drank while she was pregnant with you, or something like that. It gets rough. It's rough being a finder. I will say that much.
Yeah. But where do they get this much gold from? Because I mean,
So-
let's say like a
Alywels
Godslayer-
asking the
a
deep
Godslayer's
questions.
Like 80 mil or
Alright.
something.
So-
Alywels gonna end up.
We don't we don't go down that line. That's none of our business.
Okay.
Like we're not gonna. It's not like we're going to like. Oh well, could you get a tax return receipt so we know that the gold is good? There's a limit to how much we can do. Like we operate in good faith. We assume that our buyers are their means are within the terms of service that ZeniMax has set forth. If we operated in bad faith, then at that point we might as well just stop selling carries altogether.
After this
Yeah.
podcast,
And especially today in this economy, or what I mean by economy is the ESO economy, gold has become significantly more available and easy to get through antiquities, through mat farming and selling, through writs, through these like the Zenithars event that just happened. Was it last week or the week before? Like getting gold in this game is significantly easier now than it was 2-3 years ago, or even further back.
Yeah.
I
mean, it
remember-
definitely is, yeah.
I remember, was it like 2019? I believe when Elsewhere came out. No, even before Elsewhere came out, Wrathstone. When I believe the meta was, I believe the meta was Sororia and Mother Sorrow. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I recall off the top of my head.
Mhm.
And in order to get Mother Sorrow, people would go buy it from guild traders, or they would farm it into Shan. And I remember Mother Sorrow Divine's pieces would sell for like 50k, 60k, which was a significant amount of gold then. Now, like a golded pieces out of Mother Sorrow can sell for like 200, 300k. Like the staves, they sell for like 1 million or 1.5 million. Like it's ridiculous. Like how much prices have been inflated within the game. Chromium Platings, I remember they used to be 65 to 70k. Now they're over 350 on PCNA. I don't even know what the PCEU prices are. From what I heard,
I think I just sold
Elias,
one for, like,
our mutual friend,
700.
yeah,
Wait, how much
they're
do you sell for?
significantly more inflated.
700 or something? I can't
700
remember.
per one?
Pretty sure, yeah. 700, 800.
700, 800? What?
It's mad.
Jeez.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, so
On EU?
inflation has gotten.
No, yeah, I mean, like the question of where they got this money from. I think in definitely like the last year, it's become more like, okay, you can actually probably make 20 million in a week if you really tried. But,
Yeah, you definitely could.
Yeah.
Nephis and I, we were flipping Dragon Room about a month back. I personally made over 60 million gold. I made more off of Dragon Room than I did off of carries.
Yeah.
Like people who play the guild traders, like they can make tens of millions of gold. One of our friends and fellow officers in Semp, Becca, she's an officer in on PCNA, one of the major trading guilds, Ninja Squirrels. She was talking about somebody who made 300 million gold in like a week or something. It's ridiculous.
God.
300 million gold off the guild trader? Like it's insane. No, it wasn't a scandal.
Let's
Well-
have a look. Wait. Oh no, 250. Here we go. 250 for chromium plating. I'm sure it has been near 1 million though.
Okay.
But yeah, 250. Yeah, I feel like in the real world, if you didn't actually check where these people were getting their money from,
Oh,
you'd be done for-
you think
you'd be done for money laundering.
you think people are buying gold from like fucking those shitty sites?
Potentially.
I mean, I can see that.
So I would say from experience, there's definitely people who buy gold in this game. There's definitely people who sell gold. That's just the reality of any MMO. It's been that way since back in like the late 90s, or even I think it probably goes even further back than that. Whenever somebody figured out that, hey, gamers are insane, you could you can get them to spend their real life money on something that has no virtually no backing.
Right.
So, yeah.
After this podcast, I'm gonna find Alywels' character suicided itself mysteriously somewhere in Belgard.
I know. I mean, I don't disagree with him.
It's good questions. It's good fucking questions, in my opinion. Fuck.
Yeah. And I should stress that I'm not like some like fucking white knight that's really is down to destroy the ESO buying community. Like, I don't actually care that much.
Big Ben.
I'm secretly Big Ben. But no, you know, I mean, I've got like reservations about it, which means that I don't want to. I wouldn't purchase anything, and I probably wouldn't do a carry for people either.
That's fair.
You know, but you know, people can do what they want with their money and their time. Now the other thing is, why do you charge people? Because I quite like helping people just for the fun of it. Like, we've got loads of like late night dungeoneers on PCEU. I mean, just the past month I've probably helped like 20-30 people through veteran Dreadsail Reef. I've not taken any of their money.
So
yeah,
the point of a carry, it's a guaranteed chance. You're giving us gold to give you guaranteed results. Let's say, for instance, somebody wants to farm, I don't know, Kinross. They want to fill their sticker book. Yeah, sure. Like, maybe you can have friends, but the friends' timings may not match yours, or it would take maybe, I don't know, like, because their schedules don't match exactly with yours. It would take maybe two or 3 days, or even 2 or 3 weeks to get everything you want. Like, honestly, a lot of our gear purchases are actually from other endgame players. They're like, you know what? I don't want to wait. People are impatient. That's just how it is. And they're like, if I can provide a small lump sum of gold to save myself time, because time is obviously the most valuable commodity anybody has, it's worth it to them. Like,
yeah.
And honestly, I feel the same. Because if I don't mind farming gear, but if I can do it more quickly, then it doesn't really bother me.
But like, whenever I've been in an endgame guild, if someone needs gear, like, the whole team will help them farm gear. Who are these people that play endgame but don't have any friends or a raid team?
Well,
Help them.
I don't know how in PCEU is, but for a lot of people who are in endgame guilds, they're in like 3 or 4 cores at once. So it's difficult to match up times and schedules.
Sure. Okay.
I think most players...
I can't speak for the entire endgame community, but...
A lot of raiders I know on PCNA, like, they just hop on for raid and get off.
Yeah.
They just
log on
for
more
raid
and
and log off.
Yeah. It's definitely become more and more common now. People, they either don't want to invest the time or they don't have the time. So they're like, and again, like I said, time is the most valuable commodity any of us has. Like, it's the one thing we can never get back. So if we just, provide a lump sum of gold to save time, so where we could do other things, more productive things, why not?
Yeah. I mean, I still feel like if they're so busy with their like real life and stuff, then I don't know why they'd care about the video game. They should enjoy their real life. Escape the video game. Like, the video game's for people that...
Well,
that's kind of
like saying... Video game is escape.
Well, hold on. What about the people, what about the average Joe or average Andy that goes to work 9 to 5, comes home, makes dinner, and plays the game a couple hours? They're still having fun, right? They're questing and shit. Doesn't mean they should, you know what I mean? Like...
I mean, I can't tell people how to play the game, but I just feel like there's something sort of peer pressuring them into thinking that they need this.
But how are they being peer pressured?
Peer pressured by who?
By people or by players selling the carries. I don't get it. Like,
no,
I think there's more.
Carries,
I think there's more peer pressure in the Crown Store, because the Crown Store gives you the feeling of, what do people call that shit in English? FOTM, feeling of FOM.
Oh, fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out. Yeah, FOMO.
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
sorry. FOMO. That's pressure because it's like, oh, these new Crate season came out. When's the next time it's gonna? You never know. Oh, it even says it like the limited house for limited time. That's FOMO.
I think all of these things are like problematic, and I worry, and I think does like carry selling contribute to that sort of culture.
But carries are always there, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the content will always be there. I feel like, but the crown crates may not be there the next day, or the I don't know, like the Indrik berries may not be there tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's pressure, I think.
But like the pressure to like have it now rather than spending time like finding a group and progressing.
That doesn't exist for carries though. Because in carries, like the raiders are still there. Endgame is going to be there. So long as Endgame is there, there's going to be a supply for it.
Yeah, but
True.
like the pressure of people feeling like, oh, I need to have this skin now, rather than I can have this skin in like 3 years when it gets nerfed. Like that well,
that's on the person. If they don't want to be patient, that's on them. Like we can't take responsibility for that.
Oh yeah. But I mean, I understand like it's not your fault necessarily, but you can still be contributing to the culture of it, I guess.
Not really, because if they want to wait 3 years, they can purchase it then.
True.
I see where you're coming from. I would agree with you, Ali, if like these finders are going out and like I don't know, getting on their mount, their Godslayer mount, strutting around everybody, and whispering each person, "Hey, check out this mount. You want to know how to get it? You just pay this much gold." But they're just putting a copy pasta in zone chat. And that's all they're doing.
I definitely don't think it's necessarily the people organizing or selling the carries that are putting this pressure on people. It can be like
you mean like members, like
their friends or the game.
Consumer pressure, their self pressure.
Yeah, consumer pressure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's such a gray area.
In my experience, with when it comes to, because it's not the gear. Like I believe you're talking about titles and skins at this point.
Not that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So. Most people, for them, the skin is a temporary fix. Like, or it's just something they want that is going to lead them to something else. Most people who purchase skins, for the most popular skins are obviously Dramothra and Vass. And those go to the role-playing community. To them, it's just an accessory. To them, buying a skin is no different than going to the mall and getting a watch or getting an earring or getting a ring. Like, you're just doing it to make yourself look pretty. And then you go off and then have fun with your friends. Like, hey, I'm a Sothasil factotum or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And you can roleplay that as you want.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I have heard from the EU community is that a lot of people are buying skins in clears to get them tags in raiding guilds to allow them to progress.
Yo, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
So we've had that. I don't know. Like I'm assuming it's the same in PCEU, but PCNA endgame community is exceptionally small. We're not a large community. If you buy your clears, we're gonna know about it. Like you can't get away with it. And even if you somehow did, logs exist. Player performance exists. Like if you walk away with a GS, like if you buy a GS or an IR carry and then you go into VAS and then you're floor parsing, it's gonna be very obvious. No one's gonna roster you again after that. Like
I think they'll get found out quickly, but like I feel like there's maybe a moral responsibility from the carry people to be like, this isn't going to get you what you want. You're purchasing something that isn't getting you what you want.
I feel like
that's on them.
We
don't offer a place amongst ourselves. Like you can't give gold to raid with us, right?
Yeah.
Like usually when a carry happens, we politely ask the client to go die in a corner somewhere so they won't interfere with mechanics.
Oh. Yeah, in game, right?
Yeah, in game, obviously,
my
very
God.
much in
Why
game.
do we have to distinguish that one?
But
Yeah.
if they want to use the clear to get into a guild, a raiding guild, well, I don't know now, but I don't know about back then, but now logs have become so much more prevalent in the
Yeah.
endgame community. Like, it's almost impossible to get into a roster without providing logs,
hmm
especially if you're newer into the community and you're not as well known.
Yeah.
Because unless it's on a training run, where the raid lead is specifically saying, you know what, I'm going to open this up to all levels of experience, regardless of who you are, and we're going to prog this like the old-fashioned way. Then it doesn't really matter whether you have a clear or you have a title or you have a skin. But if you're going for a more experienced, like say a trifecta farm, which is only going to go around for maybe a month, or a score push, like at that point, like you're gonna have to, like, it's gonna be very apparent. Whereas again, if it's a prog, it doesn't really matter because you're going to be learning it one way or the other.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I don't think it makes a difference whether if somebody tries to use a carry as their clear or a carry as their weight into a roster.
Mhm.
At least not in this day and age. I can't speak for our console brethren because they don't have access to logs. Which honestly, in my opinion, is the greatest travesty to console. They definitely deserve logs more than anybody else.
Yeah.
But I don't
think
see. But being somebody who has been at the forefront of the carry community for the last 2 years on PCNA, this has never been an issue of people trying to present. It has happened. We have had isolated incidents, but it's a very, very rare thing. And every single time they get found out.
Yeah, I think it's kind of more of a problem of these sort of big discords that give people tags just through like bots and whatever, and they just, you know, they check a screenshot and they give them a tag without really understanding what makes people a good raider. I think that's where the responsibility is for people to understand that a clear doesn't equal competence in a trial. Because equally, you could like, you know, I could go and join some Dread Cell Reef run and get a completion without ever having done the trial before, and I get carried by the other 11 people. Whether I buy it or not, it doesn't make a difference. Like, think, I don't know. It's but I don't really know how these big discords give people those tags, because we've had it in ESOU, right? Like,
so you just post in ESOU, you post like pitkas, or if you're in console, you post screenshots. But that's after you've done the raids in ESOU, at least currently, anyway.
Yeah.
So,
like, you have to do the raids in ESOU. You know what I mean? You know about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've seen the.
So, something within the endgame community, we understand this. I'm not sure if some of the other people who are not deep into the endgame community understand this, but after a certain number of years, a trifecta no longer has the same meaning as it used to. Trifecta title does not automatically equal competence within that trial. For example, take Griffin Heart. It was about 4, maybe 5 months ago in a raiding guild that I'm in. I'm a raid lead in it. It's called Transcending Apotheosis. It's a raid led. It's led by a mutual friend of Nephis and I, Kozin, who's also an officer in Semp. We did a VCR3 training run. 2 of the people, one of whom, which was a portal tank, only had a +2 clear. In a 2-hour time slot, by an hour and a half mark, we got GH for the entire group, completely on accident. So that +2 tank, who only had maybe an hour's worth of experience in +3, got GH. Because the rest of the roster, I'm not diminishing their own contributions, but the rest of the roster was that much experience to the point where any mistakes they could or would have made was mitigated by the experience of the group. That's not going to happen in, let's say, a Planesbreaker. Certainly not going to happen in a Swashbuckler. So titles and trifectas, as the years go by, within the endgame community, they start to lose a certain amount of weight. simply because through power creep and through the general knowledge that amasses within the endgame community and our ability to adapt and react to trials becomes larger, the trials themselves become significantly less difficult and just easier and easier and easier.
Yeah. I don't know whether people like starting the game necessarily know that.
Yeah, that's the thing, though. It's not
Yeah.
a well-known thing. Like, for most people, 99% of the community, a trifecta is an unreachable goal. It just isn't. It's out of their reach. And I know people are saying, well, 99% is probably too excessive. No, I would say it's actually pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Because the endgame community is just that small. Nephis, maybe you can correct me on this, but if I recall correctly, Matt Fearer, it was either or sometime earlier this year, he said ESO had reached 20 million players or 20 million accounts,
20 million.
something like that.
20 million, yeah.
Yeah. 20 million players. So if you go to the forums right now and you look at the PTS patch notes, guaranteed less than 50,000 views on that PTS patch notes. And the forums do not record unique views; they record repeated views. So, let's just assume that they're unique views. 50,000 unique views of patch notes compared to 20 million players. That's less than 1%. That's less than 0.5% of people who have seen the patch notes in the entirety of the ESO community.
Are those 20 million active players, or are they 20 million accounts?
I think they mean 20 million accounts, but you know.
Yeah, I assumed when I heard that 20 million accounts.
Yeah.
But even then, like let's say maybe
like
a tenth of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's say, or half of that. Yeah, let's go with half of that is actually active. 50,000 to 10 million. Like only 50,000 people have actually seen the patch notes, or have read the patch notes, or have somehow impacted by the patch notes. Everybody else, they don't care about the patch notes.
Yeah.
They don't care about the end game. It doesn't affect them. It's not a factor in their ESO lives. So the things that happen in the end, and even amongst those 50,000 people, of them maybe 1,000 are what can be considered endgame players. Like we're such a small community that the things that happen within our community, they don't really affect everybody else. They don't at all. We're so minuscule. We're so tiny. So there's this perception that the things we do, because they tend to be the more difficult things, the trifectas, the world records, the score pushes. They're the things that get put on YouTube because, no offense to the general community, they're more exciting to watch for the most part. Again, exciting being a subjective word here, but for a lot of people, like they like watching that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But so there's this perception that endgamers, what we do is hold significantly more weight than what everybody else does, which is completely blatantly untrue. It's the 99.9% of the game that matters, and we just that 0.1% doesn't really. We're kind of inconsequential ultimately.
Yeah, and I think from a business point of view, you definitely want to be focusing on the people that are providing the most income and supporting your game, right?
Most certainly. It's why I very rarely get angry at ZOS, because I'm very business mind oriented. I work in finance. I work for private equity. I'm very business oriented. But the decisions they make for the most part, it makes sense to me.
Oh yeah.
I can see they're catering to the 99.9% of their player base. They're not catering to the 0.1% that likes to hump a dummy or likes to hump Vrol. So carries, ultimately, we affect such a small, minuscule portion of the community that it's we're inconsequential.
I think carries are good business for ZeniMax though, because if people are buying crowns to sell for gold to pay for carries, that's money in ZeniMax's pocket, right?
Yeah,
so
but
I can see why they wouldn't want
that money still goes into their pocket, regardless of whether there are carries or not. You're still seeing people who buy crowns for crown crates.
Yeah.
Not necessarily carries.
But I think but also there'll be an additional spend, I think.
Right, but there's also a huge demand from people who don't want to buy crowns to get those crown crates, so they have to make gold somehow, one way or another.
Yeah.
At that point, might as well blame the trading guilds for putting money into ZOS's pocket. Because, for example, when OMC this past week, OMC, the largest carry server, folded, and they I think the announcement said they made 25 billion gold in the past 3 years or some shit. 3 years, 25 billion? That's nothing compared to a trading guild. A trade guild this week I'm in has made over 1.1 billion gold as of yesterday. In less than a week.
They haven't made it though, have they?
No, well, that's the volume
turnover,
though.
But that doesn't.
It doesn't matter because the carry server also didn't make 25 billion. They got 25 billion, just like a trade guild gets 1.1 billion yesterday. You know what I mean? Like, because that 1.1 billion gold goes to, you know, in terms of sales numbers and after tax, 3.5% tax, it goes to the players. Carries, you split the gold for 11 people, right? Now compare that 25 billion in the past 2 to 3 years to 1 week of a trade guild. How many weeks are there in a year? 52 weeks, right? That's 52, at least 52 billion in a year.
I mean, with a trade guild, like I could list an item for 1 million, then buy it for 1.1 million, and I can say I've made 1.1 million. I haven't made 1.1 million because I've spent 1 million. You know. So
I know, but
you know,
the total amount of profits is going to be different, but still, the sales being generated are the same. Like, there's a difference between net profit and just profit, right?
Yeah. And I feel like
for
the
us,
profit margins on a carry is way higher.
No, it's not. Significantly lower. I can guarantee that.
Okay.
I can guarantee it's significantly lower. On average, Sempiternal this month has been exceptional because the fact that OMC has collapsed, leaving us as being the only major carry guild left in PCNA. On average, we do about 600 to 700 million gold a month. If we get trifectas, that number usually goes over 1 billion. In terms of pure sales, the major trading guilds in like Mournhold and Ralka, they move anywhere between 1 billion to 2 billion gold a week. What takes us a month to move in gold? I'm not talking about generating gold. I'm talking about moving gold, because that's ultimately what we do. We move gold. We don't generate it.
Yeah.
It takes us a month to do what a trading guild, one of the major trading guilds, does in 1 week.
There's significantly less players doing it though. Like 500 players versus.
Well, that's just it though, because the demand is high, but the supply is consistently low. Supply of Endgame, again, we're shrinking. We're a shrinking community. We're getting smaller and smaller every patch. Next patch, we may be extinct. But that's a different topic. But
we'll get to that topic here pretty soon.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, what do you think would kill off?
Why don't we get back on track real quick and zoom through the carry stuff real quick first. So, do you think there's a stigma? Because we touched on it earlier. Do you think there's a stigma against a player that bought a carry? That's not already in
stigma.
Yeah. So, like for example, I bought a VKA. I actually bought a VKA. I made a video about it, and a lot of people watched it, and a lot of people thought, "Man, this guy lied to us. He's been buying carries all this time." But I just bought it just for the gear, right? I just bought it for the gear. I don't really care about the trial. But I think a lot of people see the stigma. Like if you buy a VKA or whatever, you're not skilled, right? But what about the stigma with players who are not in endgame yet? You know what I mean? Like I can easily say, I'm gonna buy a carry, and everyone knows who I am. It's whatever. But what if it's someone you don't know? They buy a carry, then they try to get in rating. Is there a stigma against that?
So I don't actually know. I have known of situations where people have confessed to having harassed because they bought a carry, and it's usually so most carries that are bought are for gear. I would say 85 to 90% of carries are for gear. They're not for clears. They're not for skins. They're not for titles. They're for gear, because gear is significantly more valuable than a title. Because you can do something with the gear. With the title, you just put it on, and like 3 months later, ZeniMax will make a better one or a crappier one.
Well, what I mean is, like, have you ever seen stigma against a newer?
Yes, I have.
You have.
I have.
If they buy a carry, then they're not allowed after that.
I don't know if they're not allowed, but they have been ridiculed for it. I've personally seen it. People have confessed to me about it. And I will admit there is a certain stigma, and people tend to condescend towards them, which is unfair in my opinion, because I've bought carries, never for a clear, but for gear. But they are if somebody buys a carry, it doesn't necessarily mean they're incapable or they are incompetent. I've actually had people who bought a carry for me end up becoming raiders for me later on, who did carries in turn. That's happened. So I think one of the issues in the ESO community is there's a general disdain for endgamers. I'm not saying everybody,
sure.
but there is a certain there's definitely a disdain for endgamers. And if you associate with endgamers, or if you do something that if you support them, which is that buying carries from them, you are seen as a traitor, or you are seen as part of the problem. Most players I know that aren't in endgame, they're very decent, honest folk, very open-minded. They're normal people,
Okay.
They're normal average person. No. Yeah. When I mean normal, I mean like they're an average, like honest, decent, rational thinking person.
Right.
Like if somebody bought a carry, they're not automatically going to be judgmental towards them. There's a certain subset of the community that is very judgmental, that immediately they're quick to cast judgment, they're to point fingers, and ridicule, and attack. They exist. These are people who are extremely hostile to anything they perceive is outside of what they consider the right way to play the game. And it's really sad because these people tend to be the more vocal ones, whereas the average person just wants to play the game and have fun. They're not usually on the forums. They're not usually on the subreddits. They're not in YouTube comments. They're not even in Twitch chat. They're just like average people who are just looking to play a game on the downtime from work or from families or whatnot. But again, there's this very vocal minority that just likes attacking everybody. They have it out for anybody who doesn't play the game in accordance to the way they want the game to be. And you see them on the forums all the time. You see them on Reddit all the time. Like, I remember it was maybe a month or 2 months ago, I was on the subreddit, and somebody had posted a newish player. They've been playing for, if I recall correctly, 2 or 3 weeks, and they're like, so and so is the gear I'm running. Can somebody recommend me a better build? And one of the top comments was, you don't need build recommendations. Stop asking for build recommendations. Just play the game how you want. You're part of the problem by trying to think there's an optimal way to play the game. It's play how you want. Just stop. I'm like, why are you being so hostile and rude to this guy? Like, he's asking for help for how he can enjoy the game better, and you're like, no, you're telling him how he should enjoy the game. Like, how can you throw play how you want at somebody who's asking for help?
Well, that's why I disagree.
Like, he's asking.
Yeah, but that's why I disagree with you. I don't think it's a vocal minority. Fuck that. I think it's a huge part of the majority. You know why? Because
really?
Well, yeah, fucking for real. The amount of harassment I've and other people have gotten from these motherfuckers, and everyone told me when I made that video about the toxic casuals, they're, oh no, they don't exist, or you're just making it up. Oh, I didn't experience that, so your experience doesn't matter. It's invalidated. You're making shit up. I'm like, okay. Then this past week, everything blew up, and look at these people out in the fucking light. I'm just saying. And I'm saying it's a large part of the majority because the rest of the majority, they don't give a shit. They just stay quiet, or they just kind of endorse the ideals. Play how you want. Toxic elitist. Gatekeeping. How many of these words have you seen pop up over the past week? I have seen so much of this shit over the past week, more than I have any other period in ESO's history. So fuck that. I don't think it's a minority. I think it's a large part of the majority. I'm not saying it's a majority. I'm saying it's a large part of the majority. So many to the point that I think it's like we're completely outnumbered. Like 100 to 1. 1,000 to 1. You know what I mean?
Really? Okay.
Fuck yes.
Well, first off, again, to reinforce my point, endgamers were such a tiny part of the community. And there are toxic people within the game that don't fall into the category of toxic casuals. They're in the end game. They're in mid game. I think mid gamers are where perceived toxic elitists exist. Mm-hmm. Not actual toxic elitists, but like toxic mid gamers. People who get their vet clears or maybe transitioning into their hard mode clears. Some of them who are subject to misinformation and aren't really a part of the endgame community as they spread misinformation. Because honestly, and when I talk about misinformation, I mean like old strategies from like 2015 and stuff that they're still using today, which are no longer applicable or like suboptimal or worse than suboptimal. They can be a detriment to your group, or just like misinformation, like say, I don't know, like off the top of my head, people think that you can just, there's some people who think you can jump Lothus's cone, or you can dodge roll through Lothus's cone.
Well, you can in between the waves, right?
Well,
but
you can't actually.
You can jump over Hajmota things.
You know, you can jump the laser beams in Frostbolt.
You can.
I know, but like in Vass, the Lothus's cone, you can't actually dodge roll the ticks.
No.
You can dodge roll in between the ticks, like that one GCD, but you can't actually dodge roll the ticks. There are people who maintain that you can, and they teach that. I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you try to argue against that, like if you say, "Well, I'm sorry, you're teaching the wrong thing. You're getting this person killed. Now you're a TechnikalKO. You're a shithole."
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's
that is quite funny, though.
That's a large population. That's a large part of the majority. And anyone who says, "Oh, every game has toxic people," oh, that's just a vocal minority. They're just you're literally excusing them for it.
So
you're
in my experience,
dismissing the behavior because it only happens in these few instances. But I'm telling you, it's not a few instances. It's almost every instance.
Well, in my experience, those kind of people, they're not the toxic casuals. They're the toxic mid-tier raiders.
I would consider them one and the same.
I separate them. I personally separate them.
These fucking shitters who don't know anything about the game that tell me, hey, just because you play a different way, I hate you. And I shit on you. I'm gonna call you slurs. I'm gonna send you a death threat. All that shit. You know what I mean? And you've seen this happen. I've shown you the screenshots too. I've shown everybody.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it.
I've seen emails and shit. So when people are saying in chat or elsewhere, oh, it's just a vocal minority. Oh, it happens in every game. Fuck you. Like, seriously, 100% fuck you. Because you're just basically letting it go. You're letting it go. You're not recognizing that there is a huge problem within the community at large, and saying, instead of saying, hey, we could do better and recognize that there's a problem, you're just saying, oh, it just happens like in the slums. Let the problem stay in the slums. Deal with it.
All right. Let me make my point here. So again, we talked about how the term endgame tends to be subjective. So how I personally define the tiers of PvE rating. To me, it's normal dungeons and normal trials. That's like the entryway, right? Mm-hmm. And then people who the next tier up would probably be people who are transitioning into vet content, vet trials, vet DLCs, and vet DLC dungeons. That's one tier. The next step up would be people who are progging the hard modes. From then, the next step up, people who are farming the hard modes. And then above would be people who are progging trifectas, and then people who are farming people who are progging trifectas. Then the next step up, people who are farming trifectas, and then after that is the score pushers, who are getting world records in the world's first. That's how I define them in tiers of levels of rating. In my experience, the vast majority of toxicity is found in the people who are transitioning into vet and the people who are progging the hard modes. That is where the vast majority of toxicity is located. People who are just going around Craglorn farming Nirnhone, like Nirnhone stuff, or they're going around questing in Arden, they don't really interact with the endgame community. They don't really consider us toxic because they've never spoken to us. They've never looked at our videos. They don't care for our videos. Like, they're just there to roleplay, have a good time, quest, and just enjoy the amazing, beautiful scenery that is Tamriel. The people who are making that transition into veteran content, and they tend to be the most toxic ones. The way, in my own personal experience, they tend to be the ones that attack other people because they think, like, once they've made that transition, they are as good as, or can be as good as us, and they're like, you know what? We don't like the way you do things. We don't perceive the way you do things as the right way of doing things, and so we're going to attack you. And that mid-tier, not the people who are just farming, overland mats and selling them on the trader. No, the mid-tier of rating is where I find it's just saturated with toxicity. people who become either arrogant because they've gotten their high shatterer or they're a freaking overlord, and
Overlord. It's a good title.
it's a really great title. I love that title. It's one of my favorite titles of freaking overlord. But these people who hang out in Craglorns or in these discords, and they look at people who are getting trifectas, and they're like, those are the worst people in the world. Those people should just be killed off. And I'm like, yeah, like then like that subset of the community, that's where a lot of the toxicity is concentrated, because they're the ones hitting like 70 80k but not hitting the 100k mark. They're the ones not getting the griffin skips on Yondir. They're the ones not doing a sub 5-minute VAS or mini skips in Cloud Rest, and they think we're the problem because for some strange, like, they think the high DPS is our problem. Like, we're the ones who created high DPS. Like, we're the ones who are enabling skipping mechanics, and we're keeping them from getting to that level. Like, we're just like hoarding everything. We're stopping them from entering what is the end game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're just
what do we think it is that causes those people to have those views? Is it like a personality trait within those people, or is there something intrinsic in the game?
I think it's a mix of misinformation and
volume.
Just inferiority complexes.
It's volume too.
And just a lot of people misunderstanding the end game. And because let's say people who have like a hard mode clear, would you consider that who have all the hard mode clears, no trifectas, but just hard mode clears, would you consider them an end gamer?
It depends what you compare it to. I mean, it's I think it's subjective.
I say there's
okay. Let's compare UA
end gamer compared to like the guy doing the normal.
I think there's two tiers.
Well, that's just it though.
Yeah, exactly.
When I'm speaking of end game, I'm thinking of trifecta farming and score pushing. I'm thinking of, I'm not just going to get a GS, I'm going to get 250 plus GS. I'm not just going to go for a Dawnbringer, I'm going to go for a sub 18-minute Dawnbringer. Mm-hmm. I'm not just going for an IR, I want a double mini skip IR. So to me, that's endgame. Like, when you're really trying to push content, when you're really, you're enforcing your own rules within something that ZOS has already created. You're adding additional limitations. You're pushing yourself, you're pushing your team. Whereas, to me, that's endgame. And again, this is all subjective, because going back to what Deltia said, and again, I love Deltia. Like, his streams are entertaining as hell. But Deltia on his website defines endgame as anything over level 50. And that goes back to the mentality of when zones used to be scaled to specific levels, right? Mm-hmm. Back before one-time Riel. So for a lot of people, they perceive endgame as just trials. And I hardly disagree with. I very hardly disagree with that, because to me, normal trials, vet trials, and even hard mode trials, they're not, with the teams that I run, with my own experience, they're not difficult to me personally. They're not challenging to me personally. They're not challenging to my friends who I raid with. To me, endgame is adding that extra step, adding those extra limitations, and succeeding within those limitations that we as a community have put on ourselves. And again, it's subjective, and I understand it's subjective, because other people are going to have different definitions. And because other people have different definitions of endgame, what they perceive as endgame, and I'm talking about those mid-tier raiders who are just like really arrogant, conceited, and just love shitting on other people, they're perceived as the majority of endgamers. And that reflects back onto us. That is what I have found in my experience. And I found it not just in ESO, I found it in Star Wars The Old Republic, I have found it in WoW, I have found it in EverQuest. This is a consistent theme throughout multiple MMOs. Yeah. Mid-tier gamers, and I'm saying all of them.
Sure, even outside in like the workplaces as well. Like there's those middle managers that think they're fucking hot shit, but
Yeah, exactly.
They can't get promoted and they get frustrated.
And again, I'm not painting one single subset, one single demographic of ESO as toxic completely. No, that's not the case. That's not what I'm trying to make. I'm saying though, there are toxic people tend to be the most vocal. Decent folk, they're just there to have a good time. Normal, average, rational people, they don't yell at the top of their lungs. They don't write in all caps screaming at ZOS or calling people obscene names or using racial slurs. Like, we don't bring attention to ourselves because we're normal. We don't stand out. Toxic people stand out. They're the loudest ones. It's just the nature of things. And because that perception of what endgame is differs from person to person. For us endgamers, real endgamers, we don't perceive, like, to us, score pushing and trifecta farming is endgame. I think the three of us can agree on that, yes?
Yeah.
So for the other 99% of the community, what they perceive as endgame may not be, is probably not the same thing. And so we just get painted in with the rest of them.
Yeah, and who paints us?
Them, they paint us because they think that.
And then what happens? Because this is what I'm saying about volume. There's so many more. There's so many more people who do it, to the point more and more other people outside of that subset will take it as truth. And you'll see this belief, this set of beliefs, behaviors reflected in any form, any form you can name. Reddit, Facebook groups, official forums, even in Discord servers. You know what I mean? This is what I'm saying.
I mean, how does one control that sort of vocal?
You don't.
Group?
You
can't
don't control it. That's
that's
basic.
That's the thing. All you
society.
can hope is that maybe those people can educate themselves or learn more about these people they think are the boogeymen. And the fact that most people, including some content creators, just stay fucking quiet or ignore it is very telling for supposedly a very inclusive community. I'm just saying it's not a vocal minority. That's all I'm saying. And if you don't want,
it's definitely not a vocal minority.
You know, we went from Nephis is overreacting and Nephis is lying about there being casual players are really toxic. We went from that to, hey, what's going on this past week? You know what I mean? And now, maybe a year from now, people will be like, oh man, maybe he was right. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
It's basic society. It's the same principles that fuel nationalism and populism that we've seen the last 5-6 years explode. It's the same exact thing. It's the spread of misinformation, and I despise using this term, but fake news, and
yeah,
and people just holding on to that, because human beings we're very tribal-like. We're extremely tribal-like. I don't mean to get into sociology and anthropology, but we're very a tribal-esque like race. And what we perceive as an attack on our tribe tends to get us into a frenzy. And especially online. And we've had, and I'm sure Nephis probably remembers, we've had this conversation so many times. The anonymity of the internet emboldens people.
Yeah, definitely.
Significantly emboldens people to act out in a way they never would in their real lives, because there's a significant lack of consequence. You can't just go around your everyday life throwing out racial slurs or homophobic slurs or anything of the like. You're going to get caught. You're going to get punished.
Depends on your community, I'm
Depends
sure.
on your community.
But in some trailer parks where that stuff's encouraged. Sure.
True, but like in a professional environment.
Yeah.
In a professional environment, like, it's not going to work out. Like, you're going to get caught. You're going to be seen as a liability, and people are going to get rid of you, because ultimately a single person is replaceable. It's the same thing with ZOS, right? They see the player base getting angry, and they're looking at the numbers at the forum posts, and they're like, we can replace these players.
Do you think ZeniMax are doing the right thing in terms of like overhauling their combat system to try and appease?
All right, let's get into the patch notes. Here we go. The juicy stuff.
I kind of wanted to go through the process of the seller end of carries for like 2 minutes. 2 minutes, because a lot of people brought up like, why is this so much gold? And I think that kind of will have to be explained, because you explained the buyer end of the carries. What about the seller end? Hello?
So what exactly do you mean by the seller end? Like
how does it work for the people participating in these carries and stuff like that? Like,
okay.
How do you?
So how does one become?
How does one become? Yeah, a carry, and also like, what's the distribution of gold? Like, why are these carries so expensive?
Okay. So first and foremost, how does one become a carry raider? So carry raiding, obviously, you have one less person because the client generally does not do anything, or we ask them to within the boss, we ask them to go die somewhere, so they're not a detriment to the group. They're not hindering the completion of the group. So what we do is we have to certify. And certification means a log review process. I don't know how it would work on console, but for us on PC, particularly PCNA, we have a team of log reviewers. People who, let's say you apply, and depending on what level, because there's levels of carries. Like not everyone is qualified to do like certain carries. Rockgrove hard mode, Dreadcell Reef, like these are significantly more difficult than like doing a VAS or a VSS or even a Crag or a Vec Crag. Not that anyone ever buys a Vec Crag. But so what we do is we have standards that we look at, not just DPS numbers, but if you're doing mechanics correctly, if you're dodge rolling, how much damage you're taking. Healers have healers checks. What are their uptimes? What are their healing output? Do they have any significant outstanding deaths that they could have avoided? Same thing for tanks. Are tanks having good uptimes? Are tanks keeping things taunted? Are there any significant deaths within the group that can be blamed on the tank not properly ad managing or not properly positioning the boss? Like it's very, very in-depth analysis. One of our one of our analyzers, they talk about how it's very an exhaustive thing to do. And by exhaustive, I mean comprehensive. Like it's like minute by minute, play by play they're looking at to ensure that this person who is going to do carries is not going to throw and make things more difficult. Because we take it very seriously because people are paying us gold. We're a business. We are a business, and they're giving us gold to provide them a service. So, based for our own reputation and our own pride, we demand the best from our raiders. We're very strict about that because people are paying us, and we want people to get their gold's worth out of what they're paying. If somebody is paying for a clear means you go in and you one-shot the whole trial. You don't go in and you prog it for 2 hours. No. That's if I find that out that any one of my raiders or any one of my raid groups is going into a trial and taking 2 hours to do something that should only take 15 to 20 minutes, I'm probably going to take their tags away. I'm going to get very upset because not only are you wasting the other raiders' time, you're wasting our client's time. Our client gave gold for a quick and easy clear, not for a prog. And that's very upsetting to me when our raiders do that. So the log analysis is how, and then the log analysis, how long it takes is usually anywhere between 3 to 7 days. Usually it happens within 3 days, but sometimes depending on the amount of logs somebody provides, it may take longer. And then based on that, you get your tags. And then you are free to sign up for any roster that is available to the tag you are given. That is how it usually works.
Okay. And how does the gold work? The prices, how is that determined?
Okay, the pricing is there's a lot that goes into that. The number one factor of pricing is the economy of the game. Mm-hmm. How much are mats worth? Materials, chromium platings, Druax, Dragon Room, spell power pods, weapon power pods. Like these things, how much they're selling for in game reflects how much we're going to charge. The second and probably most important thing is the gold to crown ratio. Currently on PCNA, the average is somewhere between 1,500 to 1,800. The last time I set prices was just before High IL patch. For the new patch, I set prices, and the crown to gold ratio was around, the average was anywhere between 1,000 to 1,200. So within a month and a half, crown prices have increased by about 40% from the gold to crown ratio, which means come next patch, I will have to adjust our current prices based off of that. And generally speaking, the prices of it depends patch by patch. Like there's like no exact science behind it, but the compensation for our raiders and the time investment has to be significant and has to equal whatever the current economy of the game is facing. So that's how I usually determine. And for the last 2 years, I have been probably the most, myself and my counterpart in OMC have been the most significant people when it comes to designing PCNA prices. Now it's just me because OMC fell, so I virtually have monopoly on prices.
Jesus. Okay.
What are the end gamers spending the gold on?
They spend it on mats, or crowns.
Or crowns,
That's why.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about the?
I remember last patch, the DK meta.
Mhm.
DKs in Endgame were all running Heroes and Pots. So a lot of gold, like people were doing like almost 600 Heroes and Pots a week just off of raids.
Hmm.
So, and Heroes and Pots are expensive. A stack of Heroes and Pots can cost like 1 million gold, maybe even more. I don't even know what the prices are now since I make most of mine, but they're quite expensive. So raiding got really expensive for a while. And Zos, yeah, go ahead.
Does the type of content determine the price as well, besides economic inflation?
Yeah. The difficulty of the content definitely sets the price, as well as how new the content is. For instance, Dreadsail Reef. The price of Dreadsail Reef is currently at 30 million gold. Now, a lot of people are probably like, wow, that's a lot. And it is a lot. And the reason because it's a lot is because the number of people who can successfully do a carry. And what I mean by a carry is people who can do a veteran Dreadsail Reef within 30 minutes with one person less, meaning 11 people total. That's a small number. There's a very small number of people who can do that in the community. There's a small number of tanks who can do it. There's a small number of healers who can do it, and there's a small number of DPS who can put out the damage output with a 12th person missing, with an 8th DPS missing. So yeah, the difficulty of the content definitely determines the price. As of right now, there is no price for DSR hard mode because I don't think there's a group in the world right now that can do a DSR hard mode carry properly. Maybe Unchained Animals could have done it. Maybe West on Reset could have done it, but as of right now, that is not something on the table, and it probably won't be on the table next patch either, given the nature of the patch notes.
Okay, so let's talk about the patch notes now in relation to the carry, the whole carry thing. As both of you know, quite a few, at least a few dozen at this point, raid teams have disbanded. On PCNE alone,
every patch, though.
I disbanded my core team after 5 years.
I disbanded Pathfinders a month ago.
So. A lot of people are leaving. Belcart is empty. Homes carry servers are folding. How's that going to affect carries and stuff like that? Like all of that. Will there be more? You think? Will there be less? Will there even be anyone left?
Right now, the empirical data is very skewed for Simp because OMC they folded about 3 or 4 days ago, 4 days ago now. So whatever business they were getting, what was splitting between, because we were the we were the only 2 large carry discords left on PCNA. You'll recall back in 2020, Neff, when we made the agreement, when the carry discords got together to standardize pricing to stabilize the carry business. There were 7 guilds. By the start of 2022, there's only 2 guilds left. It was OMC and us, which in of itself is a reflection of the endgame community to see how much we have shrunk and how much we have collapsed. Now OMC is gone, meaning all of the business that they had is now coming to us. So our numbers are significantly inflated right now, so it's difficult for me to tell. But I would say, given the nature of the carry business, given the nature of ESO, demand for carries will probably rise. And supply for carries, and by supplies I mean the raiders capable of doing carries, will drop. And because demand will significantly outstrip supply, prices are going to hyperinflate for carries. And I can say that because I'm the one who sets them.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's exactly what we're seeing right now in the world.
Right.
Due to the pandemic, manufacturing went down. However, people were still spending the same amount of money, meaning consumership was the same. So demand stayed high, but supply went down, and we got inflation. And then the war in Russia happened. The war in Ukraine happened. invasion from Russia.
Mm.
And because a lot of countries were putting sanctions on Russia, Russia being one of the largest exporters of natural resources meaning, again, that natural resources go directly to manufacturers, because that's how they use natural resources to make stuff. Nickel, copper, iron, steel, natural gas, oil. Like, the lack of supplies coming out of Russia affected most heavily Europe, but it also affected North America. And because the lack of resources means, again, supply goes down even further, which is what is causing inflation to go higher even now as we speak, day by day. So we saw the same exact thing, or we are going to see the same exact thing happen in the carry business. Demand for is going to be higher because content is going to be more difficult. DPS nerfs all around the board. Everybody's going to be doing less damage. The endgame community is going to shrink because people who were in the endgame community will probably get pushed out of it because they're not going to be hitting the same numbers. Healing is going to be significantly more difficult because it's healing hots are every 2 seconds now instead of by the second. Backbar enchantments are also ticking every 2 seconds, which means Crusher, your Berserker enchants are doing less uptimes. So basically, all around the board nerfs. Everyone's doing less damage. Everyone's group potential has significantly decreased. What that means is less and less teams are going to be able to do harder and harder content. Because Dreadcell Reef and Rockgrove, both of these two trials were designed, the hard modes at the very least, were designed around the power creep of the time that they were released. And DPS was at an all-time high when each of those two trials came out. So with less and less teams able to do that, the demand for carries is going to go up because pugging it or doing open runs is going to become that much more difficult. And because the endgame community is going to shrink, either because people no longer meet the requirements, the numerical requirements to be considered endgame, or they no longer will be wanting to play because of the changes, and the supply of raiders is going to be significantly less. So I will have no choice but to increase prices because it's the only way to get people to raid.
Right. How do you think that will affect mat prices? If there are less raiders next patch, assuming the patch is I think it's very telling. I think a lot of people, no matter who you are, including endgame players or including even people progressing through hard mode or veteran content, or transitioning from normal to veteran content, I think it speaks to a lot of our fatigue with all these changes every 3 months. That, back in Morrowind, when they announced Morrowind, we read the patch notes, there was similar sentiment.
Yeah,
but
I remember at least healers stopping with the the orbs or whatever.
Well, that's Scalebreaker. I'm talking about Morrowind.
Morrowind was single orbs, I'm pretty sure.
No,
anyway,
it's Scalebreaker. Okay. At least back in Morrowind, when a lot of people quit as well, not to the extent right now, we were at least willing to stay until live and actually try it, right? But it speaks volumes that people are just giving up on week 1 PTS. You know what I mean? They don't want to test. They don't want to stick around for live, regardless of whether it's reverted or not, depending on their viewpoint of what's going on. So, how's that going to affect map prices in relation to carry prices? I guess, because if there's less raiders...
If I'm being perfectly honest, I think map prices will continue to rise.
You think so? Regardless of the people who buy them leaving the
game? I can't emphasize enough how small of a community we are, the endgamers. The 1,000 of us, and I know 1,000 sounds very small, but honestly, there's probably 1,000 endgamers. I'm being quite sincere with that. I'm not trying to exaggerate how small we are. There probably are 1,000 of us. The 1,000 of us, we do not set the prices of Druax.
Right.
We do not set the prices of Chromium Platings. We're a very small demand of it. I know a lot of casual players. I'm friends with them. I branch out. I wasn't always an endgamer. I joined ESOU in 2017 during the Morrowind patch, ironically. And I was a casual gamer for a good 2-3 years. I didn't become an endgamer until 2020. I'm still in these guilds. I'm still in their discords. people who just go around quest and do normal trials, and they're excellent people. They're phenomenal people. They're good. They're good friends of mine, and they still gold out their gear. They don't do harder modes. They don't do trifectas, but they still gold out their gear. Golding out your gear is not something that's only done because you're going for a hard mode clear or a trifecta or you're sweaty or you're parsing a dummy.
PvP
People like to gold out gear because PvP. People like to gold out their gear because it feels good to have that quality of gear. That in of itself is an accomplishment to have fully golded out gear. So I don't think prices are going to be affected by the end game. I honestly don't see it.
Maybe of like consumables, like
Heroes and
pots.
pots. Maybe heroes and pots.
I think heroes and pots definitely. Dragon Room will probably see a sharp decline in prices simply due to the lack of demand. Alliance spell power pots, weapon power pots. I don't see these going down. I honestly do not see any of these going down whatsoever.
But okay, now what about the carries themselves in terms of supply, like in terms of people? You think there's
significantly reduced to the point where I will probably have to go out and scheduling already is an issue. Scheduling is an issue, so I don't know. I'm thinking. I honestly don't know. Like I've been considering it for a long time now. We're gonna have to probably maybe limit the amount of carries we can take, as compared to now. Maybe set a quota for a week, a limit.
Okay.
Already, I've heard numerous people within the community saying they're gonna leave if these changes go live. Again, in fairness, it's week 1. We don't know the final picture, but
well, that's what's so worrying. People are just quitting on week 1.
Yeah.
And I get it because it's exhausting, even for people who are not hardcore. They have to keep up with the changes somehow. They gold out their gear, like you said. Maybe they're PvPers or PvEers, doesn't matter. They spend transmutes. They spent practicing in content or on the dummy or maybe doing some other shit.
They've just learned their rotation.
I mean, we were not even halfway through the actual high IL patch, right? And I think a lot of people just are tired. I think that's it, really. At the end of the day, I think people are just tired. And do you think like this effect on the drastic reduction of perhaps the capability to as many carries as before will translate into like teaching runs or like helping other players? Because I'm aware that...
No, I don't see that happening.
What do you mean?
What I do see happening is people focusing on their own communities to keep them alive.
Okay. I think they're already dead at this point.
Like communities are dying off, raid teams are dying off. In the last week alone, I know of 32 teams, and I'm not exaggerating that number. I know of 32 teams that have disbanded.
I think there's more than that. I mean, we're only taking.
There's definitely more. There's definitely more that I don't know
of. One platform server.
I'm just I'm just talking about PCNA teams that I know of personally, friends that I know of personally. Like, there's probably dozens more, hundreds of more, who saw the patch notes and they're like, you know what, fuck this.
I've heard similar stories from PCU recently. I don't know, Ali, can you tell us?
Can only think of. Well, I've heard like Unchained Animals aren't necessarily going to be playing anymore. And yeah, in terms of the others, I wouldn't be able to name you like 5 active raid teams.
Jesus.
I wouldn't know. Well, maybe other than like sort of casual guilds running open raids, but yeah, competitive raid teams, I wouldn't be able to name you 5. Definitely not.
And it's just a general sentiment throughout the entire community. And I wish I could say it's just the endgame community. It's not. It's more widespread than that. People are saying the endgamers are the ones like who are spreading around all this panic. They're overreacting. I wish that was true.
Me too, honestly, because I feel like I feel like there was too much overreaction to some things in the past that I thought was ridiculous.
Yeah, definitely.
Like you remember the account achievements shit? People were like, "Oh, account achievements is gonna kill Endgame," and I was like,
"Quit over that."
Yeah, get the fuck out of here.
It was gonna kill the game.
But this,
I'm like, that'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. But this is like, what the fuck's going on?
Last night we went to Belkarth. To Belkarth, where on average there's always like 7 or 8 people in zone chat advertising trials. There was like 4 people in zone chat. Sorry, there were 4 people in Belkarth. Zone chat was dead.
Yeah.
There was no raids going on, and that was prime time. We went during prime time. There was not one single raid in zone chat, and we went through, if I recall correctly, was it 3 or 4 instances?
Four
Of
instances.
spell curse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At prime time. It was,
No one's doing raids.
It was a
no one's
ghost town. I went to
The
Somerset.
patch hasn't even dropped, and people aren't doing
Mm.
raids. That's how disheartened people are.
Yeah.
There's this mentality of, what's the point?
Are there any positives we can take from it, though, like from the suggested changes? Or is there anything that will be better?
So, I will say this. The idea of bridging the skill gap is something I can applaud and support. And I think every end gamer, well, most end gamers will probably say the same. Because by bridging the skill gap, what you do is you expand the end game. You increase the demographic.
Right,
More
and
people
we want that.
We want that. We want more end gamers. That's more people for us to play with. That's more people to sign up for my carries.
Yeah.
I don't have to go around looking for tanks. Like, I don't have to go around begging, like, dealing people, hey, are you free to tank this? Like, the expansion, like, bridging the skill gap expands the end game. And we want that. We want more people doing trifectas. We want more people raiding with us. We want a larger demographic, a more lively demographic of people having fun with us.
Right.
That's a good thing. And that is why the end gamers, myself included, are so upset with these patch notes, because there's nothing in these patch notes that does exactly just that. There's nothing that bridges the skill gap. We have tested it on the PTS exhaustively. We have done trials, we have done dungeons, we have done dummy parses, and every single piece of empirical data shows us that the skill gap will widen.
Yeah. And
the day the combat preview came out, I remember you and I read it together.
Yeah.
And it didn't even take us 5 minutes into the first half, and we're like, these changes are not going to help. But then we're like, you know what? Let's wait it out. Let's look at the patch notes. Maybe, you know what? We're wrong. It could just be bad PR. It could just be Gilliam just, maybe didn't word it the right way.
No, we streamed the ESO live, and I was listening to Gilliam and Brian Wheeler, and I was like, whatever, we'll see. I was waiting for patch notes too. I was skeptical. All I said over the weekend, despite so many people attacking me for it and Skinny for it, and even fucking, I think I saw a fucking comment targeting somebody else. But yeah, it's like, I was like, okay, let's read the patch notes, and everything we predicted from not just the patch notes but the combat preview, in terms of everything we predicted has turned out to be true on the actual BTS. We've gone on dummy parses. We've literally dissected week 1 already to the point we already know what the meta is going to be. We went to do trials. People have been forming teams to do trials, and that's been hard, obviously, because no one wants to test shit because they're so fucking tired. But we've managed to test VDSR hard mode, VKA hard mode, VCR hard mode. What was the other one? Like fucking Rockgrove hard mode.
There was a VSS, a Yoln hard mode,
and Sunspire hard mode, and everything we predicted, regardless of how people perceived us to be overreacting for some reason, was true. And
everything was true.
Everything was right, and I was like,
the patch notes review that you did on stream, like page by page, we're reading this and we're like, this isn't gonna help. This isn't gonna help anybody. Like, I was very eager when they said they were making efforts to bridge the skill gap. Like, because it's not something they had addressed before.
I respect
that. They
shit,
talked about it. Yeah, I respect that shit. I support that. I 100% support that. Because if it's easier for more people, if it's more accessible, and they keep using that word without properly defining it, but that's fine with me, whatever.
No, that's
if it's more accessible, that means it's easier for us to teach people. It becomes more approachable.
Right.
Ultimately, the biggest issue with ESO is that the game doesn't teach itself. 90% of what you know about ESO comes from other players, at least in terms of combat.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes this. So if the things become more accessible, that means more people can walk through that threshold, for us to teach them to reach our level. Right? Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But these patch notes, everything in the patch notes, and everything we've tested on the PTS, it makes things more inaccessible.
Mm-hmm.
It's more difficult for newer players, less experienced players.
Yeah.
The healing changes are so detrimental to new healers that they will need significantly more time to adjust and learn the proper ways of healing and your rotation for healing, to adapt to mechanics for healing. than it is for a more experienced person. Because while the healing ticks every 2 seconds now on the PTS, bosses still hit every 1 second. Like
I
the damage.
Will it be easier for someone that's completely brand new to the game to learn how to play it if there's less CPM involved?
No, I don't.
I don't know.
I also don't. The CPM doesn't change though. The CPM doesn't change. The ticks change. If your APM goes down, that means your healing goes even more drastically down. People with low CPM are going to see a significantly significantly more reduced healing.
Yeah.
In order to keep up with the healing required, you need higher APM.
Yeah.
They didn't bridge the skill gap. They increased it. They turned the gap into a bleeding chasm.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, and this is why I said in that VishyRF video, like a lot of people will look at these clears on the hard mode on PTS from these teams going there and saying, "Oh, you guys cleared it. We'll be fine." But the problem with that,
I wish,
is we're experienced, and some people have been, and these are people who've gotten world records, who've gotten the trifectas, who've done. They are, like, a lot of them are good. They had in trouble. They had to adjust, but that they can do that because that's how much the experience they have. So if you translate that to some average Andy over there, right, doing whatever, well, how does that make sense? You know what I mean? And I think
it doesn't.
And I think the whole the every 2 seconds thing for dots and hots, I think that's really unintuitive. Because when you think about, like, why would it not tick every second? You know what I mean? Like damage over, like other games I've played, damage over time and healing over time typically is at 1 second incrementals. So it's like when you come into the game as a new player and the game doesn't tell you really anything and people refuse to read tooltips and stuff like that, well, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know how that's bridging the gap. If the point was bridging the gap, they have failed. And I think the patch in itself has failed, because I feel like game patches or whatever, updates, should be exciting, should hype you up. Every player that has reached out to me, from the mid-game to the end-game, they're either anxious, scared, concerned, or angry.
Or hopeless and despair.
If those are the reactions your updates are provoking, there's something, we need to have a discussion of some kind. If people are saying, you know what, that the range of emotions that we're seeing right now is okay, all right, whatever. I mean, there's no discussion to be had at that point. And I know some people are going to be saying, oh, well, they're going to change a bunch of shit now. And they said this on the ESOU livestream. I don't know if you watched this, Ollie. They said, suffer some pain now. This is literally word for word what they said. You know, go through some pain now to have less pain later, or like something like that, or less changes later, right? So they're saying they're upending everything yet again, so that there will be less changes in the future.
So many times.
But how many times have they said that? That's the problem here. And then usually, with some of those upending patches, they flip-flop. They reverse action after 6 months, or maybe a year. Or maybe I don't know, like, they do changes where the previous changes don't significantly matter anymore. That's the thing here. And I think people realize where this is going, or where it may go, and they've said, fuck it, we're done. You know? And I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think they got some things right. Increasing buff durations and increasing was something in the right step, a step in the right direction. I think they should have also increased buffs themselves, like Major Courage, like increased the amount of weapon spell damage it gives. Same thing with Minor Courage. I think Major and Minor Force should also be increased, and that would bring up the floor. In order to bring down the ceiling, I think they should have put hard caps on weapon and spell damage, and lower the 125% for crit damage maybe to like 100% or 110%. If they wanted to do that. That, in my opinion, would have been the smart way to bridge the skill gap.
They could have done a lot of things to bridge the skill gap. And you know, it's fine. Like, a lot of people think we're mad about damage nerfs. I don't really give a shit about damage nerfs.
Nobody cares about damage nerfs. Nobody cares about damage nerfs.
I don't care if you nerf us by 40k DPS. We'll be fine.
Yeah,
we'll be
just
fine.
Needs to be
you guys are
the
fucked.
Difficulty of the trials. That's
you
like,
guys are
nerf
fucked.
us all you want. That's fine.
Everybody else is fucked.
It's the people. Yeah, everybody else is fucked.
The
carries
will
always adapt.
The endgame raiders, whatever. we'll either like same. This was the same thing for Morrowind. We asked ourselves, like, it's not a question of if we can adapt. Is it do we want to adapt? And in Morrowind, most people said no and fucked off. Here, a lot more than those people, the amount of people in Morrowind are saying nope, I don't want to adapt. So that's a problem here. I don't know, but it's just really bad right now. I feel like.
Yeah, I think general sentiment is bad. Like, repeatedly, when I talk to my friends in the endgame community, they're like, nobody cares about the damage nerfs. Everyone's like, that's whatever. Like, nobody honestly cares. Like, doing less damage is fine. We'll still get like trifectas and shit. Maybe score pushing will take a step back, but hell, score pushing was only 5 teams to begin with.
Not even 5
Maybe
teams,
3,
like 1 or 2 teams every single patch. Not even every single patch, 1 or 2 teams every other patch. Right?
Yeah, so like score pushing was already dead. So like the damage nerfs, it's fine, it's whatever. It's taking the rotations, and then according to them, the rotations are designed to be more accessible. I am curious as to how they tested that. Like, did they actually get like people with disabilities, physical disabilities, to test those rotations? Because you and I have talked to several people now, including people who have arthritis. They have said to me and to you that the repeatedly pressing of your spammable, because now it's like 5 dots and 15 spammables to make a 20-second rotation. The repeated pressing of the spammable over and over again for 15 GCDs is actually aggravating that one muscle for your index finger or whatever finger you're using, and it's actually making it worse. Whereas with a slightly more dynamic rotation, you were spreading out the pressing of buttons through various fingers. So it mitigated the discomfort all around. Whereas now you're just aggravating one single muscle over and over and over and over for 15 seconds. So everyone I know who has arthritis, or at least those who I've talked to, at the very least, have all said the new rotations actually make it worse and make their hands hurt even more now.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of what makes ESO combat so unique and fun, is that it is quite fast paced, and I don't know how you can fit accessibility into that. I mean, of course, you want games to be accessible and playable for everyone, but without tackling like the core.
I don't even think they used the word. I don't think they even meant actual accessibility when they said accessibility. By the way, in terms of like when I think of accessibility for gaming, I think of colorblind mode, other quality of life such as photosensitivity settings. I think of maybe things like if you really wanted accessible rotations, maybe do an auto attack feature, right? Something, or you know what I mean, like things like that really make gaming easier for even legally blind people. You know what I mean? People with health restrictions. I've had to help players with similar health restrictions, people with multiple sclerosis, and it's like, they have to change a lot of things to, try to get to near the efficient level that we play at, and but it's a lot more complicated than just, I don't know, changing one aspect of the combat system to make it accessible. I think what they meant was approachability. That's all.
Yes, yeah.
Like, how approachable is the combat system? Why is it not approachable? You know what I mean? I think they missed a mark with that wording or the language of it, personally speaking.
Oh, I definitely think that. The language and lexicon of both the combat preview and the patch notes, a lot of it was surprising to me, and I sat there, I'm like, I'm surprised these actually got through. Some of it's confusing, some of it is outright hostile. Like, it was quite the trip reading through the patch notes. And also, for a lot of the idea, like in terms of accessibility, the rotations themselves, even if the rotation in the combat is accessible, the content is still as difficult as ever. And the new rotations, and the damage output now does not match up to the content. Content got harder because it's harder to do more damage, it's harder to do more healing. Like, so yeah, sure. The dummy maybe got more accessible.
Dread Cell Reef is more like mechanically challenging rather than DPS challenging.
I know, but at the same time, like some of the stuff in Dread Cell Reef, there are DPS checks there.
Yeah, definitely on hard mode at least.
Definitely on hard mode. I think Rockgrove hard mode and DSR hard mode are going to be less inaccessible. If in fact, already right now, there's only like 7 teams that are actively clearing VDSR hard mode. As far as I know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's more, but it's definitely less than 10. There's definitely less than 10 teams that are regularly clearing VDSR hard mode.
I'm just saying.
When these changes go live, that's going to drop significantly. Maybe 3 teams at best.
I'm just saying, if some of the world's best fucking, like, I'm not even exaggerating, if some of the world's best players or raiders are struggling with content X patch a bit on PTS, how is that helping? I don't get it. How is that helping less experienced players?
Yeah,
it just doesn't make sense.
Like, these changes, they don't help anybody.
Well, that's the most aggravating thing too. People are saying, "Oh, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be good." You guys are just. I
really wish it was.
And I'm like, you know what? Let the patch go through. Fuck it. Let's see what
a part of me at the same time is like, when the patch goes through, people will realize. Because imagine a new healer, somebody who's just learning to heal, with the healing nerfs. Because unfortunately, healings have been nerfed. The HOTS have been nerfed. There's no way around it. Imagine that healer going through VSO for the first time. They get to the troll boss.
Oh my god.
They're gonna get wrecked.
Bruh.
Imagine they encounter what are they called? Not lightning callers. What are they called again, Neff?
Overchargers?
Overchargers.
Oh, wait. Are they called overchargers, Ollie? I forget.
Yeah.
Overcharge
the
is
mages.
AoE.
I'm sure they're called overcharges.
Wait. Yeah, the overcharges. Overcharge is the
Yeah,
AoE.
Yeah.
Skill
court overchargers. That's what they're called. Skill court overchargers. Imagine a new healer, someone who is who's moving into transitioning into that vet phase, encountering them for the first time. Imagine the learning curve of healing that. Sure, they will learn it eventually, but the curve of learning has gone significantly higher.
What about the knowledge gap too?
Yeah, the knowledge gap.
That relates to people leaving. So who's gonna, like, it's just gonna make it harder. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
Once you and it just mind-boggling to me. Like, there are people actively people who want to get into hard modes.
Right.
You know, they want to do the content.
Yeah, exactly. And we've been trying to help them.
They want to do it. And you know what? I'm more than willing to help them. I've done a crap ton of training runs in my own time. I've been actively raid leading in ESOU. I've done VAS. I've done VHOF. I've done all the Crags. I've done VML hard mode. And in other guilds, in SEMP, I've done training runs. In TA, I've done training runs. And I like to take inexperienced people. I like to prog it. I like to give them the chance and the experience to learn the mechanics, to experience the mechanics, to die to the mechanics and understand the consequences of not doing the mechanics. You know, giving people the time to learn. But now, with the same amount of time I give, I can accomplish that much less.
Right.
Because the learning curve has gone significantly higher.
I also think this is gonna sound. It's not like a threat or anything, right? I think I'm just saying as of. I think next patch, if most of these changes go through, a lot more guilds will start turtling up, including ours, honestly. Because
definitely.
You need to. Not only are you losing people as a guild or a raid team, now you need to focus on yourself. Now you need to be more selective of who you bring in. Because that, like, you know what I mean? It's just like people are just gonna turtle up. I don't know how to say it. It's just unfortunate. That's just how it's gonna go, and that sucks. Because the whole point of Project Vitality, which I think is also gonna fold, because we've lost so many fucking raid leads, and I actually have a VMall hard mode I'm hosting in ESOU through Project Vitality, and no one's signing. Like, we can't fill that. Okay, So I think that's gonna fold. I think guilds will start looking out for themselves, which is fine. I respect that because that's your priority. If you're a GM or if you're an officer, if you're a raid lead, that's your priority. You're not gonna help some randos anymore because you're focusing on yourself and your friends. You know what I mean? That it's just such a fucked situation we're in. Assuming week 1 goes through as is, or even if the changes aren't that, significant. I don't know what's gonna happen for week 3 and week 5. What do you think, Ollie? Like, what do you think the patch notes will ultimately look like?
It's probably. I don't think they'll be as severe as they are now. I think we've seen that before. You remember when they there's a big thing that they tried to change a long time ago, didn't they? Was it like near around Harrow Storm?
It was the light attacks and the heavy attacks, where light attacks gave
it was like a
resources and heavy attacks more damage. That was right before the Greymoor patch. Yes. And I remember that, and people kept bringing that up. They're like, oh, they're not going to go through with it. And I remember very strictly that was a test, an experiment on their part. They were going to get feedback on it before making it go live. That was never the intended patch notes. That was expressively a test.
Whereas this
the language in the combat preview, if you look at the combat preview, it says when these changes go live, and I'm paraphrasing, but like you look at the combat preview yourself, when these changes go live, the next few patches will be focused on working out the bugs and hammering out the system. Which means I'm translating that as they finalized this. Like in their minds, this is finalized. Like they're going through with this. They've made that decision. They've made that commitment.
Do you think they'll really go through with quite as severe as they are now?
So it's week 1 of PTS.
It's week 1. Week 1 changes usually.
Historically speaking, week 3 and week 5 are the weeks where the biggest changes happen. So I think week 3 is when we'll get a decent idea of the direction they're going. I think these changes, for the most part, will go through. They may change some values here and there. It could be but for the most part, I think they're dead set on the rotation, and I think they're dead set on the 2-second healing. They may adjust the values so that it is actually more accessible. Like, the healing nerfs won't be so strenuous on new healers and less experienced healers.
Like the core philosophy of what they want to change is going to...
A lot of people have been asking Nephis, are they going to adjust the content? That's not going to happen. I'm sorry. They would have to go through every single trial, and that's an enormous amount of coding. That is a ridiculous amount of coding they would have to do to rescale everything. If that does happen,
and they've always said that it's more profitable for them to create new content, and that's what brings people in.
I believe it was 4 weeks ago. You guys had Mike Finnegan, and he said the same thing, right? Like he said, it's more difficult. It's more difficult to do old content than it is to make new content.
Yeah, and when people pay a subscription, they want new stuff, not fixing old stuff. Which totally makes sense.
Don't see them adjusting the new any of the old content to the new combat changes. Like, it's just not feasible. It's not profitable as a business, and because it's an enormous time sink. It is an enormous time sink. So, I think by week 3 we'll have a solid idea of where these patch notes are headed, where the next patch is going, Lost Steps. And I think the situation can definitely be salvaged. I don't think everyone should just automatically put on their apocalypse hats just now.
Not yet.
Not yet. I think the values can be adjusted, and if so, the enlarging of the skill gap can definitely be heavily mitigated, and maybe even reduced. They may actually succeed with their idea of or their hopes of bridging the skill gap. Which, and again, I sincerely hope they do, because a smaller skill gap means a larger threshold, more ease for people to cross over the threshold into endgame, which is always good for us. It's always good for us to have more raiders who are willing to raid with us, who want to raid with us. It just makes for a more enjoyable and fun game.
I'm seeing a couple of people dismiss a lot of concerns by saying the people quitting will be easily replaced by a low CP player grinding right now, and the fact that we have historical evidence to suggest otherwise from Morrowind you're completely wrong. I'm sorry.
I wish it was that easy.
The retention rate
great.
and the transition rate of newer players getting into trials is abysmally low. And if you're telling me that all the guilds that will turtle up or are playing turtle up next patch is gonna let some random person join what their progs are in light of the changes, then you're delusional. I'm sorry.
I mean, I wouldn't say delusional. I would say overly optimistic. But
No, that's delusional.
Yeah,
That's fucking delusional. We have fucking historical evidence that suggests otherwise. This is not as bad. Like, this is worse than Morrowind, and Morrowind knocked us back into the goddamn Stone Age. I'm just saying.
I do not see any raiding guild or endgamers lowering their standards. I don't see that happening.
No.
People will still want to do vast miniskips. They'll still want to do cloud rest miniskips. They'll still want 4-minute and sub oaks. They'll want to do boss A within 3 to 4 portals, or even less if possible. Because it's just what people enjoy. Again, the word fun is subjective, and the amazing thing about ESO is there's so many different ways to enjoy it. Everyone can, the same content, different people can enjoy it different ways. That is what makes ESO so unique. Every single trial can be enjoyed a different way. And we endgamers, we enjoy pushing it. We enjoy burning through mechs, because people like to think that burning mechs is boring. It's not, because there's work that goes into that. You need up times. You need the exact DPS push. You need a perfectly executed rotation. I remember once upon a time, we used to practice, but before add-ons, we used to practice rotations to a metronome. And that used to get us ridiculed on the forums. Oh, that's so mechanic. That's so boring and so monotonous. I mean, I practice guitar to a metronome.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make it boring to me. I practice, there's nothing to me more satisfying than a good pentatonic scale. It makes me swoon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Ali can probably sympathize with me here.
Yeah.
So just because I play to a metronome doesn't make it any less, entertaining or fun. And it's the same thing with combat. Like, a dynamic rotation perfectly executed. It's so satisfying to see those results on a CMX.
Yeah,
hitting endgamers, it's
rhythm. It's really satisfying.
Yeah, it's weird, but in endgame, we're not chasing the title. We're chasing the number. We're chasing the uptimes. We're chasing this. Yeah. So it's a different way to enjoy the game, and I think a lot of people don't understand that or appreciate that. But again, there's a good amount of people in the ESO community that are open-minded. And I refuse to believe that the vast majority of people are toxic. The vast majority of people are just closed-minded and just like to hate on people. No, I don't believe that at all. I think the vast majority of ESO players are good folk, decent folk, who are just looking to have a good time, which is sadly ruined by a very vocal amount of people who just like to shit on other people. ESO is a good community. I thoroughly believe that it's a good community, a healthy community, and I can what verifies my faith in the community is just last Friday, Nephis did a charity stream.
This Friday,
Yeah.
And yeah, it was Friday.
Oh.
This Friday, you did a charity stream.
2 days ago.
Within 1 hour, $2,000 were raised.
Yeah, but that's not the ESO community. That's our community. There's a difference there.
I know.
Yeah, well,
I'm just saying. I know, but I'm saying though. I'm saying the Twitch chat right now is not like a single monolithic.
Exactly.
Takeout. It's people from different backgrounds within the ESO community. We have all sorts of different players in the ESO community that are reflected in Twitch chat right now, and it's that same Twitch chat that raised $5,000 in a single stream. So I really believe that there are good people in ESO.
Yeah. And I mean, even the people being sort of vocal and to quote, like, toxic, maybe they do really care about the game, and they worry that it might become less popular and all these kinds of things.
I mean, yes, there are people who are pieces of shit in the game. That's unavoidable.
Yeah, and they're in every subset or group.
Yeah, they're in every single subset or group, but they're not the majority of the group.
Even
Well,
the people shouting loudly, I think at the end of the day, I think they want the best for the game, but they're just not presenting it in a coherent way.
coherent.
Well, they're
All
just shouting and being dumb.
I do think we need to wrap up the podcast here pretty soon, in less than 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So we'll take some.
Oh, is this a QA session?
We'll take some. We'll take some Q&A.
I'm going to turn on the lights. It's got really dark, really quick.
Turn on the light. When you turn on the light. And does anyone have any questions about anything for Ce-Nex or us about carries or what we discussed today on the podcast or how carries work and stuff? Just questions.
Where does your name come from? Ce-Nex?
Did you say VRF?
Did he?
I'm right here.
Where did your name come from?
Oh, my name. Okay, it's a bit embarrassing. So
Right.
I used to be a huge Yu-Gi-Oh fanatic when I was younger,
Right.
and my favorite card was Chaos Emperor Dragon. It was also, incidentally, the very first card that ever got banned from official Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments.
Of course. It did.
So the CE in my name stands for Chaos Emperor. Next is one of the other things in my childhood that I had a strong fascination with was Greek mythology, and I particularly had a likeness for the primordial goddess Nyx, who was embodied the primordial night. Nyx was seen as this extremely powerful force that had a very passive role in Greek mythology. She was the mother of death. She was the mother of sleep, and in some versions of the Hesiod theology, she was also seen as the birth mother of all of creation. And she was so powerful that even Zeus himself feared her and refused to anger her or confront her. But she never took a major role in mythology, and I had this mythical infatuation with her. So CE, the Nyx is a more masculine form of Nyx. So that's where my name came from.
Okay. What is the delay between ordering a carry and your order being fulfilled?
Depends on the demand at the time, and also depends on our schedule. For instance, right now we have an extremely high demand due to OMC folding and us being the only major carry service left in the Discord. On the server, PCNA. So let's say somebody books a carry. It may take us anywhere between 1 hour to 12 hours to even respond to that ticket because of just how busy we are currently. And we may have to book the carry several days in advance. If you were to buy a ticket now, I think our earliest availability right now, off the top of my head, I believe is that Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. So we're that booked. We're booked 4 days in advance right now.
Okay.
On average, we can usually get a ticket done within the next 24 hours.
Okay.
Or if you book it early in the morning enough, we can do it that evening. That's usually how it works out. As of right now, though, it's very difficult for us to fulfill an ASAP run, if you will.
How likely is that ZOS will take your feedback into consideration? Our feedback? I don't know. I mean,
honestly, there's no way of answering.
I have no way of answering that. I mean, we've been sending. I've also been sending a lot of data, a lot. It's not just anecdotes or it's also. I mean, some part of my feedback was also the personal feeling, because what is the tactile impact of me pressing a button and seeing an 8-second dot, what it does, why it's doing that, versus that same dot doing a 20-second duration. That's huge for the combat feeling, right? So I don't know. We're sending them bunch of data. A lot of people are saying we shouldn't, but I feel like we should if you do care at this point still. I don't know.
As of right now, we've had raid teams on the PTS. We've obviously ZOS can see the numerical data from their fights, but we've also had them telling us how the fight felt, how the differentiation, how the HOTS from the healers worked against Zamaj's dots, damage over time abilities. how the DPS felt. Like, was it clunky? Did it fit in right? If I recall correctly, 8 Puppies wrote a full essay on the encounter
Yeah.
that
and Gina tweeted that they'll forward his document to the devs. So
Oh, nice.
Okay,
we'll see. What if ZOS nerfs every type of damage you take from PvE content? Like, let's say 30%. What about then? I mean, that would make sense.
It would make sense to me,
but it's a lot of work, probably.
But it's we touched on it earlier. Reworking old content, that is to say, to go through every single trial and scale back the damage. It's a lot of work. It's an enormous amount of work. And if Mike Finnegan on Nefis and Ollie's podcast about 4 weeks back, I think now, he said they usually work on patches 2 years in advance.
Yeah.
So this is something they've been planning for a long time. In order to rescale all the content back, they would have to put on hold the next, 2 or 3 patches and just focus, and they'd have to rewrite and stuff. Like, it's an enormous amount of work and a lot of time investment. So I don't see them touching old content at all. I don't find it feasible.
How do you see things getting better, improving going forward? What path is there for ZOS and the devs that may listen? Don't know.
Yeah, honestly,
first, I think
it's too early to tell.
First, I think the best thing they can do, besides maybe reverting or significantly changing a lot of things on PTS right now, is telling us what their vision is at this point. Because I fully support whatever vision the devs may have for the game, even if I may not completely agree with it. I'm all for it. It's their game, their creative vision, their project, whatever, right? I just need to know what that vision is, because I feel like I don't know the vision anymore. I was fully behind their hybridization because I felt like they were doing all the standardization, the item set audits, all of that, the CP change, all of that, to set everything at the baseline and then build on that as a foundation for future combat changes and content updates. But with yet another wild swing again, it's kind of like, what's the roadmap? I'm not seeing it. Maybe if they release some sort of roadmap of some kind or some sort of explanation of what their vision is in more detail, I'll be much more confident in them as not just a player, but as a consumer. Because essentially, at the end of the day, I am a consumer as well, right? Anyway, let's keep. There's more questions. Why not add 3 healers to the raid composition if healing is becoming harder?
Because DPS has already been nerfed significantly, and by taking away another DPS, your damage output is already now even more significantly decreased, which means content is going to take that much longer, which means your tanks and healers are going to be subject to that many more mechanics, because the fights is going to be longer, which just significantly increases the scale of difficulty.
Yeah, that would be a really huge change.
I know it's not a popular sentiment, but the simple fact is, an ESO damage is king. It is, most of the content is designed based off of damage. Yeah, there are healing checks. Yes, there are mechanics that require tanks to do additional mechanics more than just blocking and taunting. However, ultimately, damage is what sets the pace of any and every trial in this game. And dungeon, I should say.
I wasn't around for the Morrowind patch, but I hear it brought up as a kind of dark age for Endgame. Yeah, it was. Since you witnessed it firsthand, how did the gamer community survive? What lessons could the current community take from that to weather update 35? Well, we didn't really survive, or we just kind of
downscaled a lot.
We just kind of, I mean, okay, so the circumstance in Morrowind was a bit different from now, because back then we were a bit more isolated in our own bubbles on our respective platforms and servers. Right now we have ESOU and so many other Discord servers or like hubs or platforms where we can interact with one another regardless of the platform and server you're on. So the knowledge may not be lost in terms of like what people are doing. Like Morrowind, I mean, there's a reason why there's such a significant knowledge gap between 2017 and even like 2019. There's a reason why people are still doing strats from 2016 or 2015. That's because a lot of that knowledge was lost, or people weren't sharing all that stuff. So if we want to try weathering in a worst case scenario, it would just be constantly sharing the knowledge. I don't know about the actual function of the raid teams. That's kind of a different story. And yeah, I don't think it was survival. It was kind of like we were just kind of there. It took us a lot of time, and that's why I said the people who were saying, "Oh, you're gonna be easily replaceable," is fucking delusional. It took us more than 2 years to get to where we were before Morrowind, and another 2 years to get to where we are now. We've seen an explosion of open raids, and that explosion has suddenly been diminished by just the presentation and the patch notes. So I don't know. There's no answer to it. We just have to see. And I think most guilds will turtle up because that's priority. I don't know.
Yeah, and there's always going to be people raiding and playing endgame content, but it's just going to be a lot less of them, and they'll have less of a voice. And
yeah,
it will like slowly fade.
Like whoever wants to stay will stay. That's all. And we'll see what happens, really. Any chance that the combat team will be on your future podcast? You successfully invited Finn before. Surely there's a possibility, right? I don't know. I'd have to ask. I don't know if it's wise at the moment because I'm sure a lot of you, I'm not saying you as in not you guys, but like a lot of you as in ESO players will probably fucking flood the fucking Twitch chat and try to harass them. Like, no disrespect to you as in the ESO community, but there's I mean, Rich, you know what I mean, like the him stopping streaming, that was kind of really unfortunate. But anyway, let's keep going. How someone who wants to get into raiding, how will they go about that if a lot of groups will be turtling up? I mean,
the same way. You would have to progress. You would have to join a raid team, or you would have to make your own raid team, and you would have to learn. And it's going to be more difficult to learn because, again, I feel like communities like ESO runs and ESOU will probably diminish significantly. So people will have to just learn the old-fashioned way of progging, looking at logs, reading through mechanics. It'll be more time-consuming. It'll be more arduous. But yeah, I think that's how it's going to be. If, again, hypothetically, if the patch notes as now go live, that's how it's going to be. And it'll take a long time for people to reach that endgame level, simply because the lack of access to the knowledge that endgamers have and that we've made accessible through programs like ESOU, and by making logs public and by uploading videos on how to read logs, or uploading videos on, hey, we just progged this new trial, these are the mechanics we found, these are the ways we found to counter these mechanics.
Or, of course, you could just also buy a carry, get a tag on the Discord, and then join a guild that way.
Yeah, you could do that. You could do that. You could actually buy training runs. Like you'll need deep pockets.
Yeah, that's true. You can buy training runs. I've heard people doing that.
How will oh yeah. Let's see. If they completely revert to changes in PTS, do you think that community stress will be put at ease?
No.
Yes and no.
I think
short term, yes. Yeah. Long term, people will be even more skeptical. I think just these patch notes alone have presented a huge dilemma for a lot of players in terms of, can they really trust the direction in the game? Can they really believe in the vision of the development of the game? I think a lot of people are very perturbed by the very notion that the patch notes were regarded as okay by the devs. They think, like, a lot of people I've talked to, and this is my personal perspective, think the devs are really out of touch with everything and everyone. They don't think that their argument is, if the devs are okay with this, what does that say about the long term? So I don't know. I think it fractured a lot of trust, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate.
And it's rough. So I don't know if reverting the changes alone will. I think we'll probably see a huge downturn, at least for the next patch, regardless of what happens. I think people will still quit. People will still be fatigued. People will still take a break. People will still turtle up. That's just how it is, and it's a lose-lose. I empathize with that because it's a lose-lose situation. You know what I mean? So it's hard to say.
Consistently, the question I've been asking, and many people have been asking, is, to what end are they making these changes? They said accessibility. They said to bridge the skill gap. The data, the consistent testing is showing the exact opposite. So everyone's left wondering, well, they're saying one thing, but the data is showing completely another thing. And there's a lot of trust lost, which is sad because honestly, I think ZeniMax's developers are some of the best developers in the world. Like they're very open, they're a very friendly community. Their constant streams, their interactions with the community. Gina is I've never seen a member of any dev team as beloved as Gina is in the ESO community. She's like a mascot. Like she's more than just that. Like people like honestly like whenever Gina shows up, like people get happy about it. Like she's like a minor celebrity within our community, which is amazing.
You named your kids, your twin daughters, Gina and Gina.
No, I didn't. No, I did not.
Okay.
But
Oh, man.
I think a lot of people they like the devs, and when Rich was streaming, it was extremely popular. People felt included. Like they're good devs, and honestly, they made a really good game. They made a really fucking good game, an enjoyable game, and I appreciate them, and I appreciate all the work they put into this game. They're amazing people, in my opinion. But in light of these changes, people are just confused, and confusion and worry of the unknown. They don't know where it's going. If they had maybe published a roadmap. And also, again, going back to the combat preview, if the language of the combat preview, the lexicon they used, was a bit more friendly and a bit more less ambiguous, I feel that things would have been the worry and the alarm would have been heavily mitigated compared to what it is now. Are there any other questions?
Where do I buy a carry from Ce-Nex? What's the advertiser fee in the carry? That's two different questions, by the way, by two different people. What's the advertiser fee in the carry guild? And also, where do I buy a carry?
You buy a carry by going to our Discord, #guild. Sorry, not #guild, !guild in chat. And it should be Sempeternal. That is our Discord. On the side, we have a lot of channels. One of them is called Buy a Carry. It doesn't get easier than that. Click on that one, and there's a bot. You can click on that, and it'll take you to open up a ticket. However, again, to reiterate, we are currently experiencing a very high volume of carry requests. So if you're gonna buy a carry now, it may take a full week for it to be finished, because we're swamped. We're exhausted right now. Our finder's fee, or our advertiser fee, is 15% of the total sale. So let's say you sold a Cloud Rust hard mode. Cloud Rust hard mode is currently being sold at 18 million gold. So 15% of 18 million is 2.4 million. You get 2.4 million for just selling the run to us. So you don't even have to be in the trial. 2.4 million for doing for just, sweet talking somebody into giving up their gold for. Welcome to capitalism.
Okay, last question, because we gotta go soon. Why are you so hesitant to admit the changes are good long term? It will ease the fatigue, the rotation will be brain dead easy, so more qualified DPS. Only the AoE heal should be excluded. It's great. I don't even know how to answer this fucking question.
Well, there's no data. Well, I'll be honestly speaking, answering you sincerely, there's no data that proves any of what you said. Everything on the PTS, every single parse, every single trial, every single dungeon has conclusively proven things have gotten harder. In the long term, we don't know what's the long term simply because ZOS has not told us. We only know what they've put in front of us right now, and that's the PTS. And everything on the PTS has, without a shred of doubt, proven things are going to get harder for everybody.
And it will not
rotations
ease... Yeah, it will not ease the fatigue. Rotations are boring. So combat's not engaging. Healing is fucked. Everyone's tired of the constant changes.
Every single person I have talked to with arthritis, every single person has said repeatedly pressing, because the new rotation is 5 dots and then 15 spammables for a 20-second rotation. That is the new rotation. Every single person who I have talked to with arthritis said repeatedly pressing a button 15 times over and over again, because you're using the same finger to press it. It's straining that one single muscle 15 GCDs in a row. It's actually making their arthritis more irritable, whereas in a more dynamic rotation where you're moving your fingers more consistently and spreading out the usage of your muscles rather than just spamming one single thing over and over again and using that same muscle, it's actually it's more irritable, because by using the same finger over and over again, you're aggravating that one muscle and bone joint over and over again. So every single person I have talked to who has arthritis have said the new rotations hurt them more than the current rotations.
But Zoss
So again,
is
all the data, anecdotally or empirically, have conclusively proven to us these changes have not helped anybody. You don't need to believe me. You can go look on logs yourself.
exactly.
In fact,
Or
if you
just test
want,
on
after the
PTS.
chat, I will post chat. What?
Just test on PTS if you don't believe it. I don't.
Yeah, you can
I don't
just-
give a shit.
yeah.
You just go test on PTS yourself instead of listening to me. Instead of listening to Hack the Minotaur. Instead of listening to Browy Got This. Instead of listening to every other content creator except I think Zyno was the only one who was on board with the changes. That's fine. I respected that opinion. His assessment, whatever. But go ahead.
Wait, let me follow.
Just test on your.
Let me follow
just,
up on
just
this.
test on PTS. That's all you gotta do.
This person.
I
Let me
don't know.
follow up on this. This person is saying Charlie too cool, but Zoss answer for the handicap is a heavy attack build, not the highest DPS build. Okay, so first off, you are forcing people with disabilities to play a certain way. That is 100% against the play how you want mentality. You're forcing people to play a certain way. That's not fair. Second of all, heavy attack builds got nerfed.
Yeah, I don't
Heavy
know.
attacks
What
are doing less
Oh,
damage.
yeah.
So there's the notion that heavy attack builds are for people who are disabled is one, insulting. Two, it's completely untrue.
Yeah, I don't know. Go test on PTS.
Yeah, go test on PTS. You don't need to believe me. You can go on PTS and test yourself. Download all 90 gigs and parse it on your hard on a dummy, or go do a trial.
Yeah, you can organize a trial. Yep, that's really it. But yeah,
Like I really wish everything I was saying was just me being an alarmist, or I'm really starting to hate the phrase now, doom and gloom. But like, it's not. Like all the data, every single piece of evidence, every single piece of testing, like no one's being helped. People are being screwed over. People with disabilities, like it's actually being rougher on them. Like it's sad. It's really sad. And I hope Zoss addresses this. I respect them. I love the company. I love the developers. I think they're earnestly trying to do the right thing by bridging the skill gap. I just think the execution of it is wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we'll wrap it up there.
Mm-hmm. Where do we find you? See you
Where
next
do you
if we want to watch you.
Watch
I
him.
guess.
No, I don't stream. I don't do content. I'm strictly a backend manager guy.
Mhm. If we want to buy carries from you, then it's the link.
You
in
go to
chat, yeah.
Sempiternal Guild. Sempiternal Guild is the largest now social guild on PCNA. We're not just a carry guild. I'm just the face of the carries. I'm just one facet of a very multifaceted community. We do everything from housing to fashion to screenshots, PvE, PvP. We have a lot of players who play Dead by Daylight, Phasmophobia. We branch out. Currently, as of right now, we have a housing contest that is, if I recall correctly, closes on August 17th. I may be wrong about that, but feel free to join the Discord and check it out. We have an enormous amount of players, over 2,000 players. And no, it's not an endgame community. It's a community for all members of ESO. We're a social guild primarily. I know I've been talking nothing about carries for the last 2 hours, but that's just my one responsibility in the guild. We have other officers, and we have so many different facets of what we do. Like, please join. Like, I guarantee you'll have a great time.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on to the podcast, Ce-Nex and Ollie. I thought that was a rumor, by the way, about Pathfinders fucking disbanding. Why? What the fuck?
I don't have enough time to be organising that anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm not enjoying raiding enough to want to do it. Maybe in the future I'll.
Yeah. Same, honestly.
Yeah.
Oh yes, Fluxy is right. In game, Sempiternal Way, or sorry, just Sempiternal now. We have a guild trader with absolutely zero fees. Why zero fees? Because our carry business carries it. So if you want a guild trader with no fees, we have every week in Leowin a guild trader. So feel free to join. Because again, we don't have any guild fees. Just join and be a trader.
Yeah.
Best guild NA.
God.
Carry service carrying guild trader? No way, bro. It's in Leywin, right? Yeah, it's Leywin still.
It's in Leowin, yeah. It's been in Leowin
I
for
think
the
we're
last
planning
few
to
weeks.
stay on Leywin. So.
For the foreseeable future, yeah.
My landmine
Alright, I'll see you
business
guys.
helps provide money for my rehabilitating children with missing limbs business.